Welcome to Sports CTO Talks. In this series, we would be connecting with industry leaders from the sports and technology domain. We will simplify sports and technology for all of you. I am Ami, your guide on this journey through the minds of amazing tech leaders and sports leaders who are shaping the future of sports. We will dive deep into discussions about AI, about cloud, about cybersecurity, about sustainability. If it is tech, we are talking about it. Today, we have a very interesting guest, and it is the first time on the podcast. We have a ex NFL player with us. Right, Giorgio?
I mean, I guess we have to quantify that by saying I was a kicker. So some people might not accept
Okay.
the kicker as a football player, but yes, I
But
was
we
in
do,
the.
we
Oh,
do, we do.
thank you. Thank you.
Perfect. So, like today, we have with us Giorgio Tavecchio. I am thrilled to welcome someone who's truly mastered the mental game, both on the field and in the business world. He was born in Italy, raised in California. Giorgio's journey began on a high school football field. What started as a casual hobby quickly evolved into a powerful calling. That calling led him to play college football, make it to the NFL, and take his talents overseas. But Giorgio's story does not stop there, and it's beyond. Off the field, he's worn many hats: coach, entrepreneur, business operations, development manager, and now he's bringing that same focus, resilience, and team first spirit to the tech world. Giorgio is currently channeling his energy to Boolean, an online tech academy that's empowering individuals and businesses to unlock their potential through award winning courses in today's most in demand skills. Today, in this podcast, he would be talking about resilience, focus, and the art of performance under pressure. How the mental game is to be done and to be done correct. We welcome you, Giorgio, to the podcast.
Thanks, Sami. Super happy to be here and looking forward to chatting and sharing.
Absolutely. So, my first question, because I'm very curious, I want to know, just take us back to the NFL days, the first day, the first game, and, what do you remember? What are the moments, both mentally, emotionally, physically, everything?
Yeah, the first word that comes to mind is duality. I know that might not be the word that most people think of when they think about their first NFL game, but in my experience, it was a long time coming. And there's this old saying in the United States where it takes years of hard work to become an overnight success. And that I think was pretty encapsulating of my debut game. It took me years to become the starter to finally make it to the regular season. And when I set foot on the field that first day, I remember thinking to myself, well, history will say that I finally made it to the regular season, and whatever happens from now, I just felt was going to be a bonus. And I know that sounds kind of odd, but there was this acceptance and also kind of letting go of the stage, which helped me to actually perform really well. And it removed some of the pressure and the importance of the stage and brought it to allow me psychologically to just let go and allow my body to do what it was trained to do. But I brought up the word duality because from a personal standpoint, that was such an important moment in my life. After all these years of chasing, finally making it. And then I actually had a pretty special game. I went 4 for 4 on field goals. We won by, I think it was 6 or 7 points. So I think I scored 10 or 12 points. So my impact on the game was really important. One of these kicks was towards the end of the game, which kind of closed out the game and secured our victory. And it was the first time in NFL history an NFL kicker had debuted with two field goals that were more than 50 yards. So I couldn't have dreamed of a better debut, and I'm super grateful for that experience. But at the same time, the other part of the duality was I was just doing my job. I was doing something that had been training for years. So almost like what Armstrong said, Neil Armstrong, when he stepped on the moon. One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. For me, it was one huge day for me as a person, just another day as a kicker. And that is the approach I try to take to every kick, to every moment. It's just another opportunity that's mutually exclusive of anything else happening, and just try to bring my best to that each individual moment, regardless of it was the warm-up kick or the kick to win the game.
You make it sound so easy.
It
And
wasn't.
I know it is not, I know, but still you make it sound so easy. And to the yours also, trust me.
Yeah, it was really special. And I just remember, I think we had a camera guy who was following me around in pregame. He's like, "How do you feel?" And I remember saying, "Just grateful, just grateful." And it was this state of letting go that was, hey man, I'm just grateful to be here. So it wasn't trying to hold on or make things happen. In a way, it was getting out of the way to allow things to happen, which is the challenge when you get into some pressure moments. The stage, there's this subconscious desire to want to cling and to hold and to force, when in most cases you have to unpack the stage and bring it back, bring your mind back as if you're on the practice field by yourself at your high school on a Thursday afternoon, and allow the body to just be free to be able to
True.
to 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 perform its technique.
True. So, like, what are your experiences, the highs, the lows, the uncertainties of professional football? Playing at college level or playing at school level is different, but the setup is very professional. So, like, what were those? How were those? How did you overcome it?
Yeah, it was really difficult making the transition from the college game to the NFL, because in college, you might not have a great game. That happens, but you're still on the team. In the NFL, as a kicker especially, it's difficult because you can be cut at any time, and there aren't that many guarantees in the contract. So I had a former coach tell me once, I think very poignantly, he said, every week you start a new life. And it's like you have 17 lives as you go through the NFL season, because there's 17 weeks. So no matter how well you played the week before, you get back to the facility on Monday, you watch film, and okay, you have the next challenge, the next date with destiny coming up the next weekend. So you live your life in this cycle of life or death on a weekly basis. And what was helpful for me was to try to stay as present in each moment as possible, because there was so much uncertainty. There was so much that was out of your control as a player, that if you started to try to navigate those uncertainties and control the things that were out of your control, you just kind of went crazy because there was so much out of your control. So try to bring my attention to the present moment as much as possible, and focus on what was in my control, which was how I took care of my body, how I prepared physically, the mental space that I got into when I was on the practice field, when I was on the game, and be as focused and within myself as possible to be able to navigate the storm that often came your way when you got to Sunday.
Absolutely. So, like, what was a defining moment into your game or into the NFL career that taught you something which you carry even today? Like, there might be a lot of things, there might be a few things, but what are those?
I go back to one moment specifically. There's a couple moments, right? And I'm aware of this in my own self narrative, but I've always seen myself as kind of the David versus Goliath uh, story. Kind of underdog, grew up playing soccer, born in Italy. Who would have thought I would ended up in the NFL? And there's a couple moments where maybe I had difficulties. I faced adversity in college. I remember there was a kick that I missed at the beginning of the fourth quarter of a game, and we ended up losing the game by the same score, and it was by 2 points. So I got a lot of blame for the loss. And I just remember I didn't have to work harder or lift more weights or train more to make that kick. It was a very makeable kick. It wasn't very far of a kick. But it was just trying to be my best in that moment, right? So there was kind of a paradigm shift in that moment, and my response from that difficult experience shifted my perspective to where it was less about the circumstances and the situation and more just about how do I go deeper within myself and challenge myself to find my best in every moment, regardless of the circumstance, regardless of if it's an important kick, if it's not. Just try to remove some of the attachments that can kind of distract you from your performance, from your routine, from your execution. And that was really helpful. And then maybe in the NFL too, remember we had a coaching change on the team that I was on. I ended up getting cut. Psychologically, it was really tough because I thought my career was really going to take off from that moment onwards, and having to, rebuild your self-esteem, your self-confidence. And I remember the next time I stepped on the field, I really got into this deep space where it was just me with myself. It was really a moment of relationship with the self, and everything around didn't matter. So it brought me back to that really deep space within myself. Again, not getting caught up in the external circumstances, the consequences of the result, what people were going to say, what they might do, what might happen, really bringing it back to the being as rooted as possible in the present moment and present with myself. So there's a couple moments where that was reaffirmed, and that is what was able to sustain me in difficult times, right? Which you might be could be equatable to, the growth mindset. Whatever happens, I know I'll be able to find a way to grow from this experience. But the important thing is to live this experience as much as possible and not get too far ahead by staying as present as possible.
Absolutely. So, like, when you're talking about this, a very important question as a player, as a business person, pressure is real. You take
Mhm.
it on field or you take it in your business world. Like, how do you deal with it? Like, what are your learnings? What are you are carrying right now? Or are there any new things, in the business, on the business side you have learned? And, how is it? Like, is it different? Is it same?
Yeah, I think the pattern is the same. The context is different, right? The pattern of an athlete, of a businessman is there's a result that has to be achieved, right? There's a challenge, whether it's competition with someone else, competition with yourself, to be your best in every moment. And maybe with athletics, to try to oversimplify it, it's a little bit more linear and a little bit clearer and more immediate, right? Which I think is brought to the nth degree as a kicker. The ball goes in or it goes out. So it's an immediate result and it's binary. It's good or it's no good. And everybody knows it's completely transparent. Everybody knows exactly what happened, right? In the business world, in my limited experience, but growing experience, there hasn't been that much immediacy, or the nature of business hasn't been that absolute in binary, in, out, good, bad. But the challenge with the business world is you have to be flexible, adaptable. You have to understand where you could bring the deal, how you can continue to build a relationship, um, and you don't know what you don't know. So that's part of the challenge. Maybe in the business world is I'm looking at this deal, this opportunity, this moment with a specific perspective, but can I be critical and be open to different perspectives? Where can we find a way to work together, to make a deal, to grow in a win-win situation? So I think it's more dynamic in business potentially, and it might be just a little bit more compressed in the sports world. But it's the same type of pressure. There's goals. You have to realize those goals, and you just got to find a way to get it done.
Correct, absolutely. So, like when you're talking about pressure, performance pressure, or anything, there is resilience which works hand in hand, and it is often talked about in the sports world as a whole. So, like, does it look different in the real world, or when you have entered the business world? What are your learnings there, or how does it look personally, or when during the transition from sports, from a player to being the CEO of a company, how does it work?
Yeah, I think it comes back to what my mother used to always say, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on camera, but she used to always say, "Shit makes the best fertilizer." So
That's true.
respectfully, love you, mom. The concept is when you're challenged is when you'll probably experience the most growth. So going into a challenge or a time just time of challenge, or a difficult scenario situation, with the mindset not of being attached to a certain value system of result, it's good or bad. It's either I learn or I learn. It's one of those two. The outcome, if you take away the relativity of it and just make it absolute, it's just another opportunity to learn. And that's what has really helped me in my time, because I've had some great moments, but I've also had some really challenging moments. And the way I was able to progress from those challenging moments, to grow from those challenging moments, is to try to find ways to understand how I could improve, where I can be better, and use those as opportunities for growth. It wasn't necessarily a failure. The only failure was not living the experience 100% and not growing from the experience. That would have been the biggest shame, because essentially these opportunities present that for you is a chance to grow. So in that, when you face a challenge, try to find, embrace it, live it, do your best, but then realize that whatever happens, give yourself some time also to reflect and understand how it went, what you could have done, where you could have done more, where you could have done less, and use that as a chance to continue to grow.
Absolutely. So this is like, during your journey as a sports player, like there is no room for error, right? As you were saying. So how do you build the mental muscle into that?
Mhm.
And like, to the growing, to the upcoming players, like, what would you tell them? How to be strong, how to keep on going, and, like what are the positive things which they need to see, which they will see at the end of the road?
Yeah, I think one thing that was really helpful for me in this maybe we're talking a lot about motivation now or how to really continue going and growing was the idea of really knowing what your why was, what your purpose was. And I don't know if this is as much about logotherapy as it is about a TED talk I saw by Simon Sinek called The Golden Circles. And he drew, three circles, one concentric inside the other. The outside said what, the middle one said how, and the most inner one said why. And he said, if you start from the inside out, it really doesn't matter, matters less how you do things and what you do, especially that why is going to propel you through whatever happens, right? So I try to really embrace that. And going back to what I said earlier, that the approach was in those paradigm shifts that I experienced in football was redefining that why or making sure that I locked on to that why, which became, and for me, it was a very spiritual thing. Like, how do I give God my best or find God in these moments? Or how do I find my best in these moments? Oftentimes the worst possible scenario. So that why propelled me to continue to grow. That is, I think, something really deeply, innately inside of us. And if you're able to lock into that, then every step you take is just going to be a Lego block building on top of what you've already learned from a technical standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, from a psychological standpoint. So it's really something beneath the surface that can provide that fuel for your growth. And then everything else is just the how, which is attention to detail, commitment, sacrifice, and the what just happen to kick a football, or you happen to throw a baseball, or you happen to lead a business, right? But that why I think is what is fundamental in all of this.
So, like when you're talking about this, why focus is the key at the end of the day. You take sports or you take business. So, like, how did you focus? How did you train focusing on certain things day to
Yeah,
day, like in the day to day routine life? End result, everyone knows. But, like,
yeah,
how was that? How was the experience? And how did you translate that into your business?
sure. I think as an athlete, people said I used to have a productive paranoia for the details. And I think as a kicker, because the nature of this position is like being a golfer on a rugby team, or like being, I don't know, an origami maker in a Formula One race. There's so much cool things going on, but the level of detail that the kicker lives with is inches, centimeters, within a space of a game where we talk about yards. So being able to really bring your attention to this millimetric level of precision, which I did with a lot of breathing routines. I use different techniques to try to calm myself because I had a very active mind, as you can probably tell. It's not just that, but I had an extra cup of coffee before this. So mind's going fast. But I use a lot of breathing routines to try to calm myself down. This is when I was in those, intense moments. So that helped me in the moment, whether it was diaphragmatic breathing or just following my breath, bringing my presence to my breath, because that was the only way in those pressure moments where I could control. The only thing I could really control. I couldn't really control my thoughts, and I didn't want to try to chase them around. I could control the rhythm of my breathing, and when I did that, that led that signal to my brain that, hey, things were okay. So I kept my breathing deep and slow, then the brain would kind of mellow out a little bit. As soon as you lost consciousness with your breath and the presence of your breath, the breath would become shallow, faster, heart rate would be faster, which then sends kind of a stress signal to the brain, which only gets more stressed, which causes the breath to be more shallow and palpitations on your hands and everything. So focusing on my breath was really critical for me in those pressure moments, which I did. I cultivated that on a daily basis. That was part of my training routine, kind of some meditative breathing practices, so that when I got to the game, I knew how to face those moments. But going back to that productive paranoia, I was so focused on being so attentive to detail on all the things that I could control, which there weren't many, but there was still a good amount of things that I wanted to really dial down tons of things that I couldn't control, but I wanted to be a master of those few things, whether it was taking my steps, my breathing routine during my steps, where I aimed on the field goal, all these little details I wanted to really be the master of. So it was as much a science in terms of precision as it was an art with the breath and letting the body go. That's from a sports standpoint. From a business standpoint, I try to translate that into attention to detail, being really methodical with the process, and being really competitive and just wanting to get the job done, wanting to, to close the deal because I wanted to be able to find my best when I was challenged to do so. Hope that answered the question, but kind of a
Absolutely, absolutely,
variation.
absolutely. But continuing the question, in business, it is difficult, right? Like to close deals, to build relations, because it takes years. So,
Mm.
like, is is your past experience helping you right now?
Yeah, when it comes to building relationships, I think so. I think it's just the nature of my personality. And I don't know if this is much about my sports experience per se, as much as it is about my personality, which once I got into a sports setting, part of a team, I really enjoyed being that teammate, developing relationships with other teammates, coaches, fans. I consider myself very much a people person, which sports, I think, magnified. When you get into the business world, as you said, it's not as immediate, absolute, and binary in that way. You have to cultivate those relationships. And the more you can bring a genuine interest, genuine curiosity to the relationship, perhaps emotional intelligence, sympathy. I know these are kind of buzzwords, but
Mhm.
be able to develop those relationships on a personal level, it makes it easier to cultivate that relationship over a long period of time. It's like slow cooking a stew. You got to keep the fire a little warm, mix it every now and then, but bring an element of care, but also discipline because you have to, you know, mix it every now and then, check on the stew every now and then, check on the minestrone every now and then to be able to arrive at that finished product. And then when you check in methodically, periodically, if you are on top of the details and you're attentive to the process and the progress of the deal, then it's going to be much easier to continue along and bring the discussion, the relationship where you want it to go. It goes back to that athlete mindset of being really attentive, focused, methodical, process oriented. I think these things translate well into these relationships.
Absolutely. So, like, can you share a daily routine of a player? Because you might have seen so many players day in and day out. So,
Yeah.
like, from the mental framework, from the physical standpoint, and anything and everything, just a normal basic. What does a routine look like?
Yeah. Starts really early. Most players get to the NFL facility 6, 7 a.m. There's a pretty good structure to the day. We have breakfast and there's a team meeting, and there's a bunch of meetings, and there's a lift, and then a walkthrough practice, and then another lunch and another practice and some more meetings. But I don't want to bore everybody with the minute by minute. But generally
We
speaking,
don't want.
some players get in early, they lift. I remember getting to the facility at 6 a.m. sometimes, and the quarterbacks were just finishing their lift. They're finishing at 6 a.m. So that gives you an idea of what time they got to the facility. And then it was a lot of meetings, right? Because American football is a very tactical game. It's very complex, which is the beauty of it. It's like playing chess because there's so many dimensions to the game and strategy to the game. There is a lot of meetings required, right? There's the team meeting, and then there's the special teams meeting. There's an offensive meeting, defensive meeting, and there's position meetings. So the quarterbacks meet with their coach, the wide receivers meet with their coach. Sometimes they have run game meetings where it's a couple positions together, but not the whole offense. So there's a lot of meetings, right? Because on a weekly basis, the tactics evolve, change based on the opponent, right? You might play a certain way against one team on offense and play completely differently against another team on defense. So as a player, you have to be cerebrally aware of what's going on so that you can get on the field and execute, not by guessing or by going slow, but executing, knowing exactly what you need to do and doing it at a high speed and precisely. So there's a lot of meetings. And then practice, usually a couple hours on the field. Depends on the type of coach, but there might be full pads, might not be full pads. So the biggest challenge of the day, I think, is really being sharp mentally and taking care of your body so that when you get to Sunday, you're ready to go. Because it's that cycle of life. And then after the game, it's a lot about recovering from the previous
Correct.
game, be able to be back on physically for the rest of the week, right? So again, a lot of activation mentally, taking care of your body, again, mind, body, and spirit, so that you can be ready for the next challenge the next week. And I remember too, from a subconscious or even just generally a psychological standpoint, when you step into the NFL facility, the players realize that you are under constant evaluation. Every single thing you do is being watched. So there's an inherent uh, alertness to players, or you need to be, because you realize that you are under evaluation, you are under scrutiny every single moment of the day. So it is a intense, very challenging time, but adrenaline packed for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. That I agree. So, like, how has that, the routine, the discipline, like, has helped you in growing the business or, taking it step by step? How is that? Like, is it helping you or not?
Yeah, I think it is because I'm bringing some of the process-oriented mentality, some of this, these methods, this idea of kind of developing a process which you can then refine, evaluate, iterate. I brought that from my kicking to my current role, where I'm doing a lot of different things, whether it's business development, account management, operations, country managers, just all things going on, because the tech space is in constant growth and evolution as well. So bringing some of those processes so that we can do things and not just do them the right way once because we got lucky, we were just reacting, but being able to effectively create processes, procedures where we can do things properly, do them effectively, do them efficiently, and be able to evaluate how we're doing them, so that we can make sure that we're doing a good job and we can scale, right? And not go too crazy, just reacting and trying to stay afloat.
So, like, how do you strike balance between preparation or over preparation, or like high end, like there's
Mhm.
a lot of preparation required? So is there a difference in both the settings, like take it on the field or take it in the business? So how do you strike a balance into that?
That's a great question. From a football standpoint, I definitely was an avid over prepare, probably. So I had to be very aware. And where I think I grew later on in my career was being able to keep things metaphysical. I know that sounds kind of new agey, but that spirituality and that in those meditative practices, in that breathing routine, that was as much a preparation for performance as much as it was trying to turn off the mind. So from a sports performance standpoint, my default nature was intense thinking, awareness, deep sense awareness, which at times can get in the way of a very kind of repetitive action like kicking a football. So I had to work to get my mind out of the way. So I did that by a lot of meditation, and not just on the game, but during a weekly basis, and then trying to build in little outlets, whether it was reading. The difficult thing as an athlete is, for most people, that outlet is going to the gym or going for a run. That's the last thing I wanted to do after a long. So I would go to a cafe
Agree.
and read a book, or go eat something and go laugh with my friends, watch a movie. So you have to find ways to shut off. And as I've gotten older, I realize how much more important that is to striking that balance in the business world too, right? Because as an athlete, as I mentioned earlier, things are a little bit more linear. You have the game week, the game is on Sunday, the whole week is prepared for you. You don't have to think that much. You just have to show up and perform. In the business world, you can be managing 10 different projects at the same time, three different teams in two different continents. So you got 1,000 things you're trying to keep track of. So finding that balance by being as efficient and as effective as possible in what you're doing, but also finding those outlets to be able to turn off your mind so that you don't burn out, I think is really helpful. Now, those can be little micro breaks, a day off every now and then, a cup of coffee with one of your colleagues during a coffee break, which is great because in Italy, which is where I live, we have a nice lunch break,
Yes.
coffee break. Excuse me. So that social component is built in, but having those moments of humanity where you bring yourself back to the present moment with those around you, I think are really important just for mental health and for sustainability.
Absolutely. So, like, if you're in doubt, like, what is your one thing that, or is there any gut you feel that, yeah, this is the thing that you should go ahead with it? What's your go-to strategy?
If I have a doubt and I have
Yes.
to myself, I have lots of doubts. My default is
that,
always
that
doing
is a
something wrong.
good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah. Hopefully it's a healthy dose of critical thinking. Sometimes it becomes a little bit of too much doubt, but that is actually what spurns me to really test myself because I'm constantly hearing, how can we do this better? Where, what are we missing here? Where can we improve? And that insecurity to a certain extent is one of my greatest values or greatest strengths because it constantly challenges you to grow and to learn more. How do you find a balance with that? What do I do? I try to create some objective space between those thoughts and a time and a place where I can evaluate the merit of those thoughts. And that's where meditation comes in too, which is what it does. It creates a little bit of space between what you're thinking and feeling and you, right? And your essence, so that you can try to find a way to look beyond the attachments that might be involved in any given situation and really evaluate what you can do, what you can't do, probably, what's in your control, what's not in your control, and what the best way to do, what the best course of action is, how to best navigate the situation. So trying to bring some objectivity, some space between what you're thinking, feeling in that moment, and you helps you make the best decisions in those moments.
Absolutely. I have a lot of questions, Giorgio, but I'll ask you one last question.
Sure.
like like share a few tips or advice for new players, school level or teen players, like advice for the players and the people who are evolving into or starting business, or they are starting their sports tech startups or anything, like in both the
Yeah.
worlds, like if you could give us few tips.
Yeah. So the first thing that comes to mind, which I touched on earlier, is understanding your why, right? If from a sports standpoint, a lot of time that why is, oh, I just love playing this game. Hold on to that. That is special, right? From a sports tech startup, if you're looking to start a company, you just started, your why is, I just really think we can change the world or help athletes, uh, improve their health or prevent injuries or improve performance. Like that why is so much more important, I think, than whatever the product is or whatever level you're playing at. Like, because that why I think is going to be so much more powerful in propelling you forward and motivating you forward. Because everyone's excited during your first practice of the year, right? Or your first kickoff meeting and your first business meeting. It's how do you sustain that energy, that positivity, that focus, that discipline after a month, 2 months,
Absolutely.
6 months, when things get difficult, right? And that's where I think going back to that why is going to be a really important thing. And that why might evolve, which is okay too. But understanding what that is and trying to align with that on a somewhat regular basis, and I need to probably do a better job of that too, because I've been going through a lot of life changes and I've been reestablishing it here and there. But it's a constant remooring to what that compass is like for you. So that'd be my biggest takeaway is really understanding your why and using that to fuel you.
Absolutely. Perfect. Now we'll move on to the next segment of the podcast, that is rapid fire round.
Mhm.
I'll ask you a few questions. You'll have to be quick in answering. Perfect.
So,
The first one, what's tougher, a 50-yard field goal or a make or break business pitch?
so in the individual moment, I think the 50-yarder is more difficult, but in a longer period of time, the business deal takes a lot more work.
Absolutely. NFL debut moment is surreal or laser focused?
Say that again. Sorry.
NFL debut moment,
Mhm.
surreal or laser focused?
I was serene. I was a zombie. It was an out of body experience, and I was watching myself do everything. Yeah.
Okay. Clutch kick or closing a big deal, which gives you more adrenaline?
I think the clutch kick, because it is so much more. it's the same business deal feeling, but just jam-packed in a moment and everybody's watching. It's much more immediate. I don't think
Absolutely.
much can replicate that.
Absolutely. One teammate, past, present, you'd want beside you in a business pitch.
Hmm. Jedediah Collins, kind of a random guy. He was a fullback on the Detroit Lions with me. We spent 6 or 7 months together. He started his own financial intelligence, financial education podcast. I've always respected him because he's a very self-aware person. He's very bright. He's very purpose-driven, and I think he's a great guy to have by your side.
Absolutely. One pre-game or pre-meeting ritual you do.
Breathing routine, meditation. Try to
Good.
just slow myself down. It's 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Just ride the waves of my breath, calm down, bring myself back to the present.
Absolutely. Harder to read, a defense line or a boardroom.
So I never actually have to read the defensive line because I never try to look up. I just try to look at the ball. I can imagine both are really difficult. I would say the boardroom because I think there's a lot more. Well, I think there's egos in both cases, but the boardroom and there's more complexities to what you have to be reading, and there's more stratification. There's more layers. The defensive line is 1 yard here, 1 yard there. In my ignorance.
Absolutely. Monday night football or Monday morning meeting.
I've had some pretty good experiences on Monday Night Football, so I'll have to say Monday Night Football. Although on Mondays, right? This goes back to the purpose. I say Happy Monday all the time. Not every Monday is happy, but if you have a good cup of coffee in the morning and go and you start with the good purpose. Uh,
I'm so sorry. I
oh, it's
don't know
okay.
what happened.
It's okay.
So yeah.
Right.
All right. Last question. Your favorite legendary NFL player. Name one. Am I audible?
Favorite NFL player. One that comes to mind was a mentor of mine for a long.
Just 1 minute, Giorgio. Just 1 minute. Perfect. So, like, I don't know. There was some internet glitch going on.
Yeah, we can do that last question.
We will need to. Your favorite legendary NFL player. Name one.
So one that comes to mind immediately is David Akers. He was a longtime mentor of mine, but I have to also say Michael Husted and Nick Novak. They were both kicking coaches, mentors of mine. Great people. I look up to those guys quite a bit.
Absolutely. Now we move on to the next segment. You will have to answer this question into 30 seconds.
Sure.
Like, how do you see AI shaping the future of business or in the sports tech industry? How do you see that?
Sure. I'll start with business first. Like many disrupting tools in the course of human history, whether it's fire, gunpowder, nuclear energy, it's how the tool is used and adapted and adopted that is the most important part of the piece. Obviously, with artificial intelligence, things are happening really quickly. Things are being improved, automated, optimized. So it's how do you use that tool in the right way that's going to make it effective for your company or not. Fun stuff though, exciting. From a sports tech standpoint, I'm super fascinated about the application of artificial intelligence. From my archaic days of trying to, from a computer vision standpoint, I would try to screenshot kicks at the same time and go through a PowerPoint and run through the PowerPoint fast to see things at the same time. I think it's changing the way we approach performance, we approach player health, and I'm really excited to see how this evolves. Again, they're all tools. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how we're able to apply these tools and really adopt them in on the field, in the on the court. That's going to really make the difference because it's not the fact that we have more information. It's what do you do with that information? How do you digest that and then turn it into insights? That it's going to be really interesting to see how this industry evolves. And I'm super curious, super curious.
Thank you, Giorgio, for your time, sharing wonderful insights and motivating worldwide audience of young athletes everywhere.
It was my absolute pleasure. Thanks for the memories, and I wish everybody the best in their journeys.
Thank you. So, everyone, let's stay connected for more understanding on sports and technology. Please share this episode with your friends, families, and the people who love sports and technology. We will meet next time in the next episode. Until then, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep exploring.